All right, so we are live and we are in action. And so my name is Eileen Nicole, and today we're going over our presentation. Just wanted to talk today about the reparations conversation and the biggest mistake that Black people make about reparations, because I feel like I've been listening to different conversations about it online, and I have not really heard anything concrete. So I was just wanting to add to the conversation about reparations in regards to the best way that we should be going forward, moving forward. So reparations should be about moving forward. Reparations should be about the community as a whole repairing. And what are we repairing from? So in my opinion, let me show. Let me show you my screen here. We should be measuring ourselves, like as a group. We have to measure ourselves against something. And in this here, I'm going to talk about why a check isn't going to cut it if we don't get what the whole point of it is for. So let's for instance, let me go ahead and share my screen again. Oops. Let's see. So let's go over. All right. So most people think that reparations is just about getting a fat check, and it sounds nice, but here's the problem. A check without a plan is just a refund that disappears by the dinner time. And I'm going to show you why I say that. Not to be pessimistic, but there's a reason why I'm saying that. The real issue isn't the payout, it's the infrastructure. We don't have anything to actually invest in as far as a group, as a community, as it goes to all of us together, something that we've all built together. We're kind of loose and everywhere. We're kind of like United States, but we're not united. We haven't we're different states, but we haven't united. So, because if we don't have a system to protect or multiply or control those resources, our reparations will go the way of every other broken promise in our history. And in this video, I'm going to expose the biggest mistake that we make about reparations and why the conversation has to shift from compensation to building a sovereign system. That's what the conversation is. And that can't be built or given by anybody else. That has to come from us. We have to build the system. We have to coalesce and compare notes and talk about things that we want in there, what outcomes we want, and how to get there. And then provide the funding for ourselves to get there. Okay? All right. So let's... All right. So let's talk about the Black wealth gap. So according to the statistics, every 6 hours, the 6 hours of Black dollar circulation versus 20 to 30 days in the white communities. That's what the actual reality is. The astronomical sum of 107.8 trillion is the estimated debt owed in reparations, as far as this is what's been talked about. This is not some calculation that I came up with. This is a number that's floating out there in the internet. However, a stark truth emerges when considering this figure. Even if such a wealth transfer was to occur tomorrow, a significant portion, potentially most of it, will dissipate within the next 6 hours, because that's how long the Black dollar stays in the Black community. There will be no change, because there's no system in place to catch the snowfall of money that will be coming. That snowfall will go right back into the economy. We have to build a system to catch the snowfall. And we can do it by ourselves. We don't have to have reparations to do that. So repairing the community has to come from within. It has to come from within. This alarming, so this stems from an unaddressed systemic issue, which again, we don't have a system in place that we are all using. There are different systems everywhere. We need to compare notes, basically. The current societal and economic structures are equipped to sustain and circulate this wealth within the Black community. So we need a drive, a will, a commitment to do it, a culture. We'll put that inside of the culture. We can add this to the culture. And we need an economic system of checks and balances. And so it has to be understood that this is such a critical statistic because of this wealth disparity. So within the Black community, a dollar circulates for an average of just 6 hours, in stark contrast to the white community. That same dollar, again, it circulates for 20 to 30 days. This severe disparity in the velocity of the money, of how the volume, how fast that money or how long that money is staying in our community, it highlights the foundational flaw in economic empowerment and wealth retention within our community. So without fundamental changes to the underlying system, addressing issues such as access to capital, discriminatory lending practices, lack of investment in communities, and the absence of robust financial education and infrastructure. The infusion of reparational wealth, while morally imperative, would tragically fall to achieve its long-term objective, systemic economic equity. The reason why is because this system wasn't built for us to thrive, and we all understand this, but we haven't done anything to build our own system. We've been trying to do that. And when I put out a video saying that we've been trying to do that through a socialist-led mixed economy structure, that we're a socialist culture, like we thrive better in a socialist setting where we're community-based, like Black Wall Street, although those were cell phone businesses, they thrived because they were in a social structure. They only served each other, that community, that the structure that allowed them to continue to build and grow exponentially was because of the social construct that they had. And so I just wanted to drive that home, because we are a socialist culture. And socialist doesn't necessarily only mean the economy. It does encompass all of everything that you're doing, because it also encompasses outreach and how you're interacting with the world around you. So, people will say that reparations will solve everything once the government finally pays up, but they're not gonna. The government owes so much money. The government is in debt like you wouldn't believe. They're not going to pay that debt. We cannot count on them to pay a debt that they owe. In the current time, why would they pay a debt that they owe from a long time ago that ain't going to be enforced by nobody to get paid? Listen, passing a law does not mean that they have to enforce that law. There's plenty of laws that are not being enforced by this government. So I just don't think that we should put our energy in this government to do any type of payout or anything like that. We would need to do that ourselves. So reparations will mean nothing if we keep working against ourselves. If the government interference keeps sabotaging us, and if outside groups keep draining our resources. So we have to build a system that addresses the issues that are important to us, making sure that the government is not interfering in our build, finding creative ways to mess up how we're building with one another. Outside interference from other countries coming in and interfering with what we're doing, because we are fighting against everybody. Everybody seems to be against Black Americans. So we have to build a system that responds and not just reacts and just on social media. Now, obviously, I'm building something locally, but also I think this needs to be addressed online, because there's a lot of people online that think that this is just for play, this is for game, but a lot of Black people are social people. So this is why we're online, but we should be making this count. So let's get into the problem, okay? So the problem isn't that we don't have a system. That is the main core. That is one problem. But we all can acknowledge that we need something in place to respond to our conditions that we're in today, so that we can move forward. We're supposed to be moving forward as a species, as a humanity, as a community, right? Nobody's responsible for that but us. So if the core problem is, we all know that we don't have a system set up to pass down generationally, and so that's what we need to do. The problem is how to do that. That's the problem. It's not that we need to fix the issue. The problem is how to fix the issue. While I'm acknowledging the fact that we have a broken system of cooperative economics, the solution we choose to fix this problem is the issue. Reparations will fail if we treat it as a payday instead of a sovereignty project. So until we repair the infrastructure, unity system, our protections, our protecting our culture, of finding a unique ways to do that, and protocols to do that, and ways to be more productive within our own community for ourselves. Pouring money into it won't create lasting wealth. If we don't create that whole ecosystem ourselves, there's why would we be? I'm not gonna because I'm a fighter. I know how to fight, but I'm not gonna fight for something there's no investment. There's no community investment that we built. So I want to go. I put something together that I think will work. So I just want to go over this. So some have defined their own versions of reparations as a one-time payout instead of an ongoing system of restoration and protection. So let's look at um, some of the reasons, why we can't get there. Again, it's how we're going to fix the problem. And our internal politics that's the first issue, is how we can't even agree on how to move forward with the solution. Because I disagree with fighting the government for reparations. That is a fundamental disagreement. My thoughts, my leanings, my belief, or my understanding, what I would like to do is to repair from within without the help of the government. Just do it ourselves, like, Bob the Builder. But we can't do that if we think that it's going to come from the government. It does have to come with a completely different mindset, because if you think that the government is going to help you do anything, think again. Like, there's white war veterans that still don't get help from the government. Like, if in my opinion, if your morality is off that center, you're way left, it's completely off center, something is completely wrong with you. There's no negotiation that I want to do with you. There's nothing to be talked about. We don't have anything to discuss as far as resources that I would want you to take credit for. We'll go ahead and do it from the inside out. So that's what I'm all about. That's a fundamental disagreement. Okay. And I wish those brothers and sisters the best. But I did want to kind of go over this video of the amount of reparations. I guess this was like a hearing. So let's go into that. I thought it was in here. Yeah. Hold on. Let me replay it. Let me share it. All right, so let's go ahead.
And welcome back to The Factor Uncensored. Federal lawmakers are now considering a resolution to give an estimated $14 trillion in financial reparations to Black Americans. Some of you hate that word. Members of Congress are now debating a resolution similar to the one being proposed in the state of California and the city of San Francisco. The idea of reparations has been at the center of ongoing debate. Taxpayers against this argue they should not have to come out of their pockets for past injustices. And supporters, of course, say reparations are long overdue. Let's bring in political strategist Shay Jordan Smith into our discussion tonight. So when you think about the word reparations and what we're hearing, and most of us think about cash payments, checks. What are your thoughts on that?
Run them. Give me my check. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Segment over, right? No. I think that it's ideal. That's also fantasy, and we don't live in a fantasy world, right? Because it would be nice to give everybody a check, give everyone a stimulus payment of back injustices, back trauma, and all that. But that's not going to work, right? Think about this. We were promised 1865, 40 acres and a mule. 40 acres at the time went for about $10 an acre, so that's $400. Make that to today's price, you're looking at $7,000. There are 14.7 million Black Americans here in this country. Multiply that by 7,000, you're looking at $300 trillion. Joe Biden can barely get student loans repaid. I don't think he can get $300 trillion, which is only 7,000 per person. So a cash payment would be nice, but I think that reparations should come in a bevy of other ways.
And what are some of those ways? You're looking at programs, scholarships? How would you fashion the reparations other than just cash payments?
Yeah, so supporting our Black institutions, whether it's our schools, our buildings, our businesses, our companies, our people, right? Pouring into our communities, whether it's giving.
So this is okay. This is something that the country. Okay, so the government does this for every group in America. They invest in different sectors of the public, the proletariat. They already do this. So he's asking the government to actually not ignore us, but just go ahead and include us, and that's reparations. Okay, I don't agree with that, but I just want that to be clear that that's what he's asking. He's saying every other group gets these. That's the point of economics. That's the point of politics, is to manage resources for the groups of different people that are in your country. That's like a fundamental basic, and he's asking for reparations to be a fundamental basic. That's interesting, but let's go ahead.
Endowments to TSU or PV, or giving, like spaces that Black people frequent, like the Shape Center, right? Building up their infrastructure, building up their programming, giving them the breadth to do the work that can be done to sort of undo the trauma that we've experienced in these past X amount of years.
And of course, to those who are criticizing, saying, look, this is from a bygone era. This is from the 1700s. I no longer had a role. I had nothing to do with that. Why should I have to pay reparations? Of course, we can go to World War II with the Japanese who were put in internment camps and they were given reparations. But for those who say this is far removed from our generation, why should we have to pay for reparations as a taxpayer?
Well, because Black people built this country, right? Our back-breaking labor literally created this country, made the foundation for what it is today. So while I'm not saying that every taxpayer dollar should go towards reparations or a cash payment or whatever these programs I'm saying would be implemented, I think that it should come out of our excess as the federal government. They're spending money on all sorts of things that we probably shouldn't be spending it on.
Exactly. I just pointed this out that they're already doing this. So you're asking them to do what they're already doing, but see, here's the thing: they deliberately do be leaving Black people out of these set asides that they have, that everybody else seems to be able to that know about and can get. So they okay, that's a thing, but that still shouldn't be reparations. Like that shouldn't still be classified as reparations. Is what I'm saying, and that would be, I think, putting on our own like. That's a bad idea. I absolutely disagree that that is reparations. That's not.
Towards building up our actual communities.
Mm-hmm. And of course, the flaky excuse is we are now a melting pot in America, and most Black people, or not most, I'm sorry, some Black people are not from slavery.
Yeah.
You know, they may have come from another country. And so what do you say to those who say, well, why do we have to pay for individual? We don't know whose family, whose lineage, whose history came from slavery.
And that's why I'm against like an all-out cash payment, right? I think putting that money into our communities, into our infrastructure as Black people is better than trying to figure out, okay, who came from where, who is this, how much of, how much of your family was enslaved. I think that's like putting that money back into our communities, our neighborhoods, our foundation is going to be a rectification of that.
Now, even though
now, obviously this, I believe got, I think this got voted down. Yeah. So I don't think that this actually went through. I think they voted against it. Let me see. Let me see. So it doesn't have like a follow up here. It just says that it was introduced into Congress, and it's just kind of sitting there. I guess I thought this was the one that actually was voted on and it was turned down. But there was one in California that I believe was turned down. I'm not sure. Oh, this is in Houston. So Black people are trying to get these reparations passed all over the country. From the individual states, and I just feel like that is kind of like a waste of time. We have to build infrastructure on our own. We have to get out of our own way. We have to say building, like he said at the end, because at the beginning he was saying that we're not, if we give reparations, it should be the same the same standard set aside that everybody else is already getting. And then he said, okay, well, if we don't get that because it's a pipe dream, then we can start to build for the infrastructure. I agree with that second part because that's the only actual option. I don't think that we don't put enough emphasis on the fact that we don't want these people, and I mean people in the government, to think that they had anything to do with us getting our community together. You see Donald Trump right now. Donald Trump is in Chicago. Donald Trump is in DC. Donald Trump is in all these different states that he's talking about. He's about to send the National Guard. Now the judge is saying it's illegal, but what I'm saying is that we don't have our own network set up. We can't even get to our own folks. We don't have what we need, and this is one of the reasons why, is because we fundamentally are disagreeing on how to repair our community. Reparations isn't just about getting the check. When I talk about reparations, I mean like repairing the community and putting a system in place. So we have to either agree or disagree on that. And if you disagree with that, then you're not going to be able to get any of the rest of this, because this is about building from here. Okay, so we're going to look at why reparations can't fix disunity. So we're going to look at Darth R. Perry. This is a guy who basically was a rat. I mean, he was an FBI informant. But I just wanted to go. Some of you may know him. Some of you may not know him. But I am just going to go over really quick how he got, how he infiltrated the Black community. Okay, let's.
Some of the cultural organizations that you infiltrated and what you did.
PASLA, Mafunde, Watts Writers Workshop, which they had.
The Watts Writers Workshop?
Yes. Watts Writers Workshop, which was one of the oldest established Black writers workshop.
That place was burned down?
Yeah. The Bureau had it burned down.
How do you know that?
I know because I participated. I did the arson.
You burned down the Watts Writers?
Yes.
Why did they want it to go?
At the time, funding had been cut to the workshop, had been cut out, but it looked like there was a possibility of a grant being given back to the workshop. And if there was no theater, there would be no grant.
How did you do it?
2 cans of kerosene, a Purex bottle, gasoline, and a flare, highway flare.
Why didn't you use more sophisticated stuff?
Oh, no. You're never overly sophisticated. It's too obvious.
This guy,
this way you make it.
Like, seriously, this is a fucking rat. This dude infiltrated the Black community and fucked us over. That's what this dude did. And he's sitting here telling you about how he fucked us over. This is part of why we cannot move forward as a Black community and what we're getting wrong about reparations. Reparation is about making sure we have parameters around people like this, predators in the Black community, predators like him, Darthard Perry, and right now, Umar Johnson. He's another predator. Let's let this rat continue to talk.
It looks like, maybe somebody in the neighborhood that got kicked out of the theater at one time, got mad and came and burned the damn theater up, that kind of thing.
But you were involved in this affair? I mean, did it get to you at all what you were?
Hey, man, that got to me a great deal. I love that theater. I built the stage.
You built the stage?
Oh, yeah. When I got to the workshop, the stage that had been, the original stage that had been built needed an extension on it. The original part of the stage was in terrible condition. They had no lighting system. I put the lighting system in myself. I put the stage in myself. And that was a stage, man. And that was a theater. It's a nice theater.
Who was the director of that workshop?
Harry Dolan.
Harry Dolan. Some very, very well-known artists supported that workshop, gave money to it.
Some very well-known artists came out of the Watts Writers Workshop. Glenn Tubman, Yapikoto. Sidney Poitier used to come down there and give a class. Sammy Davis Jr. used to come down there all the time. Quincy Jones used to come there and give music classes. We had our own 8-track studio setup for sound. We had our own sound room there.
Was part of your other activities and responsibilities to study the profiles of celebrities who were supportive of organizations?
Definitely, and especially, like I said, psychological backgrounds, weaknesses and strengths. Did he have a weakness for blondes? Did he have a weakness for money? Did he snort cocaine? Did he smoke marijuana?
Again, they had him doing this intelligence with the Black community, but this type of intelligence is what Jeffrey Epstein was into, is what with the Franklin scandal, the guy Craig Spence, that's what he was into. Larry King, that's what he's into. All these people in positions of what is now in the seat of power right now use these tactics. They think this is intelligence. They're going to get something on you that's dirty and then use you and make you do certain things that you wouldn't otherwise do, so that they can come to an end of their goal. But this man is doing the devil's bidding in the Black community. Come on.
They even get into, and that's one thing the Bureau loves, is their sexual background. They have files and files on different Blacks, not only celebrities, but a lot of others, sexual activity.
What would they do with this information?
Oh, that's used as a weakness.
So they would feed these weaknesses?
Yes.
Did you see that happen?
Oh, yes. Doc Holliday, who is one of the leaders of the VGF, Black Gorilla Family, which is a prison gang in the California state prison system. Upon his release from prison, a certain sister made herself known to him at a nightclub, whereupon he moved in with her, and she picked up names, telephone numbers, information, that kind of thing. That lasted for a good 3.5 months.
Was this an unusual thing, or did this happen often?
No, that happens all the time.
Did you yourself get involved in doing that?
Yes.
You mean
You got to watch the company you keep and how they moving. How they moving. What is this is why a lot of black people, and I'm not even going to hold you. This is why a lot of black people right now are to themselves because of men like this piece of shit right here that comes in just to get information about you so that they can give it to the FBI or somebody else.
example?
There was a gentleman that was on trial in Los Angeles that belonged to the BLA that had been busted in a southern state for a bank robbery, but was brought with 2 other people to Los Angeles to stand trial for the machine gunning of a police officer in Los Angeles. I was supposed to warn my way into the affections of his sister and whatever it took to get the information that I needed as far as what kind of defense they planned to use as to turn this information over to the federal prosecution.
Did you do it?
I got the information, and thank God I didn't have to go through with the actual thing of sexual activity.
What do you mean, thank God?
The sister was rather unappealing.
How did you justify to the organizations in which you had infiltrated yourself that you were living on an $800 a week stipend or on an $800 a week standard of living when most of them were living hand to mouth?
Well, hey, brother, I'm hustling, I mean, hey, man, so a little this on the side, a little that on the side, I get.
Because he don't give a fuck. He don't give a fuck that everybody around him is struggling and he eating off of betraying them. You piece of shit Judas.
Over, that kind of thing. In other words, ain't nobody's business but mine where I get the money. So, everybody took it for granted that I was possibly doing a little dealing on the side. That kind of thing.
Took it for granted.
But then also, everybody liked me for the simple reason that I would do things that I didn't have to do. I would go out of my way. Like Mafunde would have a pageant and they needed someone to do the sound setup for him. And I say, of course, I'll do it for you. That kind of thing. I was very well liked at one time. And
it sucks so bad because people's good nature, people using your good nature against you, using his good nature against you. His good nature is being weaponized against you. And me too, because this kind of thing still goes on. This is the same tactic. They, I'm sure, refined it since then. And you got people all day that are a part of these alphabet communities infiltrating people. But this is nothing new. They've been doing it. So, that's just what it is. So let's see here. I wonder if, now I just wanted to be clear, this really was an informant from the for the FBI. Look, vaultfbi.gov. Can you see that up there? This is from the FBI's vault. This is a memo for Darthard Perry, Darthard Maurice Edward Perry, Kansas City letter to Los Angeles for information of Sacramento. Subject completed a Black Panther Party personal report, allegedly a membership application. This undated report was confiscated by the Los Angeles Police Department during raid on Los Angeles Black Panther Party headquarters on 12/8/69. Investigation at Los Angeles and Kansas City reflects following information concerning subject. He's Negro male, September 4th, Missouri 61231, phone number, and this is basically he was in the military. He served from November 28th, 1986 to March 17th to 1969, and then I guess this is his military number. I don't know why it says military punishment, but it says while in service received something, summary court. I don't know if that say theft because it's something will start with a T there, but this is a real informant, and there's paperwork on this man. His mom is Geraldine Perry. This is the address, has been contacted in reference to son's whereabouts. She is advised that subject has has not furnished her with a mailing address, but has told her he was residing in LA and attending University of California at Los Angeles, UCLA. So this person's identity is concealed, but they were advised that subject is not nor has ever been enrolled at the university. And it's probably an administrator or the dean or somebody like that. And so LA traffic records reflected that a citation was issued on November 3rd, 1970. This is the same person, name, date, name and demographics, and his personal information. They're still keeping an eye. If you notice, they're keeping an eye on his address. They're keeping an eye on him, the FBI. And if appropriate, interview subject with respect to his affiliation with the Black Panther Party. Okay, so apparently he submitted an application to the Black Panther Party. It said that it was unfinished, I believe. Let me see. It says subject completed a Black Panther Party personal report. Okay, allegedly a membership application. This undated report was confiscated. Okay, so he submitted an application when the Black Panthers was raided in 1969. This report is in 1971, 2 years later. Okay, now he served in the military, or he got out the military in March 17th of 1969, and later that year it was raided. If you see there, he got out the military March 17th, 1969, and then the headquarters was raided a few months later. That's wild, like 6 months later. That's interesting. Anyway, so this is all his information here. I'm not about to read through all of this, but I just wanted to show you that is a real informant. That man really was doing the devil's bidding, and he didn't care. He didn't care two ways about it, even at the end. Even at the end, just very smug about the bullshit that he put the Black community through. And I have no respect for it. I just don't. So let's go ahead and get off of here and go to the next here. I wanted to show William O'Neill because he's also another piece of shit person. So I just wanted to be clear, this channel is from Incarcerated Nation, and this is just Black Panther Party undercover agent William O'Neill. This is from a few years ago, but this is just wanted to go over this guy, just so we know. Yeah, we have a lot of people that have really ruined how we should be built, but it's helped us. It's helped to say, okay, the enemy is from within more than is from without at this point. It used to be from without, but now it has turned inward. We have to identify what that is, what that looks like, as hard as it is to watch. And we have to find ways, creative ways, to respond and prevent these things from happening. And see, this is why I'm skeptical about the Darth Perry report because of this right here. He was told to go to see if he could, and this is in '67, 2 years before Darth Perry decided to go complete his application to the Black Panther Party. So I don't always, I do not trust no FBI report no 100%. Absolutely not. Because these agents were urged and encouraged to find something. And so that doesn't necessarily mean the something was true. So I feel like there are some facts, but they may have embellished some things. I don't know. But I just don't fully trust it. That's all I'm trying to say. So his love of crime, he liked to be a criminal because that was a crime. That was a choice to make to go enjoy riding in a car that was not yours. That was your choice. You were not doing it under duress. You were not doing it because you needed to survive. You were not doing it because you needed to do it. You were attracted to the thrill of doing a crime. And then when you got caught, you didn't want to suffer the consequences. So what did was turn on your own community. So I don't want to hear he was depressed and committed suicide. He ran in front of a car. He ran in front of a car, and which, I don't promote anybody doing suicide, even for this person, but miss me with the he cared about it. He should have tried to reconcile the shit. He could have turned it around. He could have found a way to still be there for his community, but he still went the coward way out. So he was a coward his whole life.
took shorthand notes, and then we depart. He said, okay, just keep me informed. And so we had a very loose relationship at that point because the Panthers weren't too active militarily. Okay, they were politically organizing at that point. They were recruiting at that point. The Panthers were trying to, they had speaking engagements at the different colleges and so forth. So we were in an organizing process, and there was very little criminal activity as I could determine what was going on. Very little to report to the FBI, in my mind. Because I felt like since the FBI was an investigative body investigating federal crimes, that crimes were what they were looking at. And so,
tell me a little bit about how you felt about working for the FBI. What motivated you, and what interests thought you were serving?
Well, in my community, the policemen were, it was the quickest way to gain respect. I think I grew up wanting to be a policeman, admiring and respecting policemen, although I always thought it was outside of my reach. My neighborhood was not unlike most people that grow up in Chicago. Most young people, we were very mischievous and did a lot of juvenile type, petty criminal type things. But stealing a car and all of a sudden having the FBI, having a case with the FBI, the thought of really going to jail got my attention. And so when he asked me to join the Black Panther Party, and he used terms, he never used the word informant. He always said, "You're working for me," and I associated him as the FBI. So all of a sudden, I was working for the FBI, which in my mind at that point, I associated with being an FBI agent. So I felt good about it. I felt like I was working undercover for the FBI, doing something good for the finest police organization in America. And so I was pretty proud.
Camera roll number 3089.
Did you ever think, or did Mitchell ever try to convince you that the Black Panthers were a threat to national security? How do you understand what the FBI's interest was?
Well, I think Mitchell, the relationship between I and Mitchell concentrated on the local activities. We talked very, very little about what was going on nationally early on in the game. Later on, when Bobby Seale and the guys would come to town, it took on a national scope. But right then and there, we were concentrated on the local chapter. And later on, I understood that his thinking in that regard, he wanted me to build up some credibility within the Black Panther Party. So he gave me a lot of room, a lot of leash at that point. He let me become a Panther before I became an FBI informant. I didn't go right in, rifling draws. He directed me into the Panthers, and then when I got there, he backed off, and he let them work on me a while. And slowly it worked. I became a Black Panther in a way. I forgot the scope of me being there. In fact, I didn't really know why I was there. I just knew I was to report, but I really didn't have anything to report early on in the game. So I concentrated mainly on Panther duties. I lived the life of a Panther.
Tell me about that. How did you, what was the work that you did, and how did you rise up with the ranks of the party?
Well, mainly from day one, we had very little personnel and a lot of spots to fill. There were a lot of activity, a lot of things to do. And so naming.
Look, this guy is another one of these, you know, informants or whatever. But this guy, this is another one right here. I just want to show you the rot that's from within and why we cannot repair our community. Nobody knew that he was let me see. Let's go to this right here.
Photographer Ernest Withers captured some of the most indelible images of the civil rights era. The photo of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. riding one of the first desegregated buses in Montgomery, Alabama, the iconic image of black sanitation workers carrying "I am a man" signs in Memphis, and he was the only photojournalist to document the entire trial in the murder of Emmett Till. But Withers was also an FBI informant, funneling information to the Bureau about the civil rights movement and its leaders. Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Wesley Lowery joins us now to talk about his new podcast called Unfinished, Ernie's Secret, which explores the government's efforts to infiltrate and disrupt the civil rights movement and the man who was caught in the middle. It's great to have you here. The podcast is phenomenal.
Thank you so much. I'm glad you're enjoying it.
So tell me more about Ernie Withers, who he was apart from his life as an FBI informant, because his biography in so many ways is a cross-section of Memphis history. It's a cross-section of American history. He's this World War II vet, one of the first black cops in Memphis, and then he becomes a freelance photographer.
Yeah, Ernest Withers is fascinating. He gets into photography in part while he's in the armed services. He would take photos of the other enlisted men and sell them to them so they could send them back to their wives and girlfriends, or maybe both their wife and girlfriend, depending on the guy, right?
Selling them, not giving them.
Yeah, correct, right? Yeah, well, he was a smart, industrious guy, right? And so when he gets back to Memphis, does a stint as a police officer, but then becomes essentially the black photographer in Memphis. And so he documented everything: homecomings, repasses, just everyday black life. He also was obsessed with Negro League baseball, and so he would travel and shoot photos of all of these black baseball players across the country. And then also Memphis has Stax Records in it, and so he photographed so many musicians, be it Elvis and Aretha Franklin and Tina and Ike and so many folks. And so in fact, when you go to Memphis, his old studio on Beale Street is now a museum where you can see this remarkable collection of photographs by Ernest.
And how did he find his way into those moments where he was so close to Dr. King and so many other icons of the civil rights movement?
Ernest Withers is probably best known for his civil rights work. He photographed basically every major campaign across the South. He's present when James Meredith is integrating Ole Miss. He's in the room when two men are...
That is crazy that he was around that many people collecting information on them. I suspected he was collecting information on everybody and sending it to the FBI.
Being charged with the murder of Emmett Till. He's there when King is riding the first desegregated bus. And part of it was that he was just kind of everywhere. He was someone you trusted. He was a piece of the furniture, you know? And he was someone who, especially the civil rights leaders, knew and respected and believed would tell the story.
So basically he was like a Forrest Gump, but a spy. Collecting information, acting dumb and aloof, like he was just there to take a photo. And really he was there to observe, because that's what photographers do.
Accurately, right? That would document what was happening. And so people were happy to have Ernest around. You know, Andrew Young, one of King's chief lieutenants, told us, you know, that they always answered Ernest's call. If he wanted information, they always gave it to him.
And all the while, he was living this second life as an FBI informant during what is now this infamous period of American history where the FBI was involved in domestic surveillance, illegal domestic surveillance. Why wouldn't Ernest Withers be valuable to a J. Edgar Hoover at the time?
So we have to remember the FBI at the time had no black agents, right? They couldn't just show up at a civil rights meeting. In fact, this was a time when FBI agents were particularly being recruited by Hoover to be, you know, white guy Republicans from Omaha, right? They had a specific look, and we love Omaha, right? But you know what I mean, right? They had a very specific, clean-cut look. That is not the best workforce if the thing you're trying to do is infiltrate a black civil rights movement that's playing out primarily in urban centers across the country, right? And so these human assets became vitally important for the FBI. People who could be in a room, who knew everyone's name, who would introduce themselves, who could ask for someone's address and it not be suspicious. And so what Ernest ends up being is a sponge of information. Now, he already was one, right? He was a local photographer. He knew everybody and their mother and their cousin. He knew where they lived. He knew when their birthday was, right? So he already had a lot of that information. But now the FBI was able to kind of prime him for it and to ask for questions. You know, a lot of what Ernest did was he sold them photographs he would take otherwise, and he might otherwise sell to the Associated Press or to the black paper. He'd shoot a protest all day, he'd get all the caption information, and then he'd sell a roll of film to the FBI. And now suddenly, at a time before the internet, before a lot of the databases we now have and law enforcement now has, they now have photographs and names, and in some cases addresses and phone numbers for people who they otherwise might not have known how to track.
One of the primary threads that runs through the podcast is sort of the moral ambiguity of the day. That in many ways, Mr. Withers didn't have a choice. That when the federal government comes and says, you know, we want information that only you can provide, he didn't really have a choice.
It's interesting, right? When you listen to Ernest Withers' family and the one time he ever addressed this before he passed, right? There's an insistence that he was not an informant in the worst sense of the word, right? That he was someone who was selling photographs, that the FBI was a customer like anyone else. And that also, what was he supposed to do? He's a black man at a time when black men don't even have the right to vote. The federal government has come to him and said, we need to stop the communist infiltration, because that was the pretense under which Hoover harassed the civil rights leaders, including King. And here you have this black man with 6 children to feed, who's not particularly wealthy. And how do we gauge now, so many years later, if he thought he had a real choice when he was asked to do these things, or if he didn't?
As I was listening to the podcast, my ears perked up when I heard the voice of Ambassador Andrew Young. The reason I bring him up is because he told you that he wasn't surprised that there was someone spying on the work that they were doing, that there was an FBI informant in their midst. But he also suggested that he didn't care all that much, that in his mind, he had nothing to hide. The SCLC at the time had nothing to hide. And as he saw it, it was good to be super transparent, whether it was with the FBI or whomever, about the work that they were doing.
That is what Andrew Young said. It's actually interesting because I've gotten a lot of feedback on that particular quote from people, right? I know modern day activists who are like, what's wrong with Andrew Young? Is he serious? Like, can he believe?
Here's the thing. They're coping so hard about this man being a whole informant. We don't know what the information was that he got from the people that he was spying on. Also, we don't know what the result of that information, what happened with the information that he gave to the FBI, CIA. We don't know if people end up getting, killed, people died. We don't know what happened as a result. But what we do know is that the FBI is never up to no good. They're always up to no good. So nothing good, the information that he got, they didn't do anything good with that information. And so here we are having these 2 men talking about this man was a man of his time. Well, what was he going to do? He had 6 kids to feed. Sir, that was your problem, not the black community's problem. Why did the black community have to take an L because you had 6 kids? That's the question I won't answer. Why did the black community have to take an L by way of you spying on them because you had 6 children and a wife? Like, make that make sense. It don't make sense. And there's no excuse for it. But these 2 men would do the same exact thing today. This is why they're coping for him.
Give that from other people. Oh, I guess that makes sense.
But those activists are pretty young.
Yeah, so they are, right?
Yeah.
And I think it cuts in a few different directions. The first is that a lot of the people from the time, people who knew Ernest in real time, have been pretty forgiving of this information that's come out. Part of it, I think, is that so much time has passed, right? A lot of this is in the rearview mirror. There's also a reality where, as frustrated and upset as people are about the FBI surveillance, the idea of holding Ernest personally accountable for what was clearly the sins of one of those powerful institutions in American society is something I think a lot of the black activists are willing to, kind of be kind about. But there are other activists who are furious with him, who are really upset.
Listen, seriously, nobody has to make anytime anybody does anything to the black community, like spy on them or come and infiltrate their community or extract vast amounts of wealth from them, nobody has to pay for that. Nobody cares. And black people should just get over it. We should always be used to being the dumping ground for everybody else. And I think that is trash that these 2 would seem like he's may potentially be black. I don't know. But these men right here, even if they weren't black, sitting up here having this stupid ass conversation about, oh, well, a man of the time. No, it was wrong, because if you were in the shoes of, if you were the one that was directly affected by what that man gave the FBI, then you'd be singing a different tune. So I wish you would just shut the fuck up.
That Dick Gregory, when this news initially broke, called him Judas. I do wonder if we could go back in time and interview an Andrew Young, 40 years younger, 50 years younger, if perhaps he might be less generous to Ernest Withers in real time as he is in retrospect.
It's an interesting question. Wesley Lowery, the podcast, is a fascinating look.
So I just wanted to kind of go over that, because we need to know that the internal conflicts are people like that, who are infiltrators, who have no qualms, and the sympathizers, as we can see, that have no problem with making sure that there is no system built, and that because see, again, they're all against communism. Communism is a form of organizing. That's all the fuck communism is. And they're trying to make it seem like it's something that it's not. All it is organizing a community that don't want to participate in exploitation. That's what it is. And although I think that some of the tenets of it, like complete control of the state, like I don't completely agree with that. I do think that the state should have some level of control, but also I think that there should be free markets. I think that there should be entrepreneurs. So I believe in both of them, but I do think that it should be more of a socialist led because capitalists are very transactional and will never get anything done if we've been living in this transactional system this whole time. It's not served us well at all. So let's look over. Hold on just a second. Okay. So we're going to look at another example of the reason why our internal politics needs to be the infrastructure of where we went wrong. It's first the people. We have individuals like William O'Neill. We have Darth R. Perry. We have the photographer that we just looked over, Ernest Withers, and others. There are plenty of others that were against Dr. King at the time. That were it was just very adverse to what we were trying to do. So let's look at another when we have institutions that are not that were meant to be great, but they just didn't turn out great. So let's look at this. Let me share my screen here. Let me share my screen. Okay.
Economy. You're just labor. Land is capital. So to gain in that agrarian economy, you're just labor. Land is capital. So to gain money and wealth and to have freedom, you have to have land.
I made $1 bed. Luck is all I've had.
At the end of the war, President Abraham Lincoln had promised the freedmen 40 acres of land per family. But those promises died with Lincoln's assassination.
Instead of 40 acres and a mule, they got the Freedmen's Bank. So instead of land, they were given a bank.
Union soldiers were getting bonuses. So the idea was to create a way to encourage the men to save the money so they wouldn't go squander it or be defrauded out of the money.
It was sold to the freedmen as better than giving you the land. You will earn the money through wages and you will save it and you'll buy your own land and you'll feel better about that. Never mind that hundreds of years of working the land didn't count for earning the land.
The Freedmen's Bank was privately held, owned, and managed by wealthy white men. But the bank's aggressive marketing conveyed a different impression to its Black depositors.
The passbooks, the notes, all featured, the heroes. It was Abraham Lincoln. It was General Grant, Howard. It was very targeted. So people were saying, these are the men who freed us. And they're saying, come to this bank.
In freedom, some skilled African Americans saved their hard-earned capital at the Freedmen's Bank and went into business for themselves.
Okay,
Some
so
Black business.
I don't like that. I don't like that. Hold on. Did you hear what she said?
Who freed us? And it was General
To its Black depositors.
The passbooks, the notes, all featured, the heroes. It was Abraham Lincoln. It was General Grant, Howard. It was very targeted. So people were saying, these are the men who freed us. And they're saying, come to this bank.
So are they saying that these are the freedmen,
In freedom,
not the black people?
some skilled African
That's
Americans
crazy.
saved their hard-earned capital at the Freedmen's Bank and went into business for themselves. For some black business people, personal services were the clearest path to success, and sometimes wealth.
They recognized that their ability to have a particular kind of skill set, which was something that the white population needed, allowed them a certain kind of mobility and freedom.
Many of them were able to cash in on expectations that they were replicating their servant roles where whites were in power and African Americans were serving them. For example, a number of black barbers continued to keep their exclusively white clientele after the war.
All these barbers spent that time in the barbershop, nurturing these relationships with white men, and used that money from the barbershop to help fund and to help fuel a black economic movement within their own communities.
From barbershops to grocery stores, black businesses relied on the Freedmen's Bank.
This is
But a decade
exactly
after it
what
was
we're working towards now.
founded, Bank President Henry Cook was running the Freedmen's Bank into the ground.
Here was Cook saying, look at all this money. They're putting their money in my bank, and whenever I need it, I'm gonna reach in and get it.
Henry Cook starts looting the bank. He just starts taking this money and lending it or giving it to some friends and acquaintances, just putting the capital into railroad bonds, which was the subprime market of the day.
With the Freedmen's Bank on the verge of collapse, the federal government turned to the best-known African-American leader in the country to salvage it.
Congress brought in Frederick Douglass to serve as the new president of the Freedmen's Bank. Initially, he invested $10,000 of his own money as a way to shore up the bank, as well as to encourage other African Americans to continue to deposit their money into the bank. But the bank was beyond saving. So Douglass had to go to Congress and say that the bank was bankrupt and it needed to close.
The fact is, I was married to a corpse. I found that I had been placed there with the hope that by some drugs or some mighty magic, I would bring it back. But the life, which was the money, was gone.
The hard-earned savings of the freedmen were lost just in the markets, just poof. And nobody gets prosecuted. This was white-collar crime, actual just crime. It was theft, and nobody goes to prison for it.
Not even 10 additional years of slavery could have done so much to throttle the thrift of the freedmen as the mismanagement and bankruptcy of the series of savings banks chartered by the nation for their special aid.
From 1865 to 1874, about 70,000 people deposited the equivalent of $1.3 billion in modern day numbers. So African Americans enthusiastically embraced the Freedmen's Bank. It was a deep loss for African Americans and a loss of a vast amount of Black wealth.
Soon after the collapse of the bank, the federal government withdrew from the South, returning control of the region to former slave owners. The dream of full citizenship for African Americans came to a screeching halt.
We see the end of efforts to educate formerly enslaved people. We see the end of the protection of the right to vote. And what is allowed to happen is a series of legislative and extra-legal attempts to suppress African-American freedom.
Any land that was able to be secured is also violently retaken. And so what you see is a reassertion of that racial hierarchy in the South that had the white landowners at the top and Black labor at the bottom.
This is the story of one of the biggest robberies in American history. A robbery so big, its impact can still be felt 150 years later. And like most of the biggest robberies in the world, nobody was punished. Picture this. It's 1865. The US Civil War has just ended. The Confederacy is over, and with it, slavery. Formerly enslaved people who fought for the Union during the Civil War had received something for the first time in their lives: a salary. In some places, the military established small banks for these soldiers to deposit their new earnings, and understanding that millions of newly freed people should be integrated into the economic system, Congress decided to expand on that idea and created the Freedmen's Bank. The bank was clearly defined as a savings institution. It would not give out loans, and the deposits would only be invested in relatively safe government-backed securities. It was supposed to help Black families earn money on their deposits and increase financial literacy. The bank was initially quite successful, quickly expanding to 37 branches across the country. More than 100,000 people opened accounts. Most deposits were small, less than $60. But the small deposits reflected a bigger hope. This period in US history is called Reconstruction, when Black people were promised equality and the chance to build wealth. But none of that happened. A few things about the Freedmen's Bank. First, even though the bank was created by Congress and marketed to Black people as a way to safely invest their savings, the deposits were not protected by the government. The Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, which insures most bank deposits in the US, wouldn't exist for another 70 years. And second, despite being created for Black people and hiring Black people to work in its branches, the bank had an all-white board of trustees. Third, in 1870, that all-white board convinced Congress to change the bank's charter, allowing it to make riskier investments and give out loans. The bank's customers were not told about this change. The board started investing in risky projects and giving out loans to their friends. Some of the trustees were in charge at other banks, and incredibly, they would make bad loans there and then transfer them to the Freedmen's Bank's books. This was corruption and theft, and in a country still dealing with the economic fallout of a civil war, it was also a disaster. A financial panic in 1873 made many of the board's loans and investments worthless. Panicked customers made runs on several branches, desperate to get their money out. And so, in 1874, Frederick Douglass, yes, the famous abolitionist, was brought on to serve as president of the Freedmen's Bank. He'd always been a strong supporter and put a lot of...
You know, in my opinion, I think that the Freedmen's Bank stands for those white men, that was their bank and that was it. It was never meant to be for the Black people because of just the way that the things turned out. I think initially they because the way that they set it up, what ended up happening, and then the fact that nobody was punished afterwards. That's why I think that Freedmen's Bank meant the people who freed you, allegedly, the people who freed you, that's their bank. Those white
his
men.
own money into the bank. The hope was that his presence would reassure customers, but it didn't take him long to realize the scale of the disaster. The bank shut down a few weeks later. It had lost $3 million, $72 million in today's money. But that number doesn't really capture the full cost of the wealth that this money could have built over generations. Instead, thousands of families, many of whom had recently been enslaved, lost everything. Congress did authorize depositors to get back some of what they were owed, but most were unable to be paid, and others spent years or decades filing claims. Meanwhile, none of the men who ran the bank into the ground ever faced legal action. It was a crushing blow to hopes for Black economic prosperity. And just 3 years later, the federal government pulled its troops out of the South. Reconstruction was over, and the old social hierarchy was back. Over the next 150 years, the broken promises and theft of this period played out over and over again for Black Americans. From the return of slave labor in prisons and the profitability of mass incarceration to Jim Crow laws, segregation, and lynchings. From voter suppression and inequality under the law to the urban policies that created impoverished neighborhoods, the banking rules that denied Black people loans, and the housing covenants that kept them out of better homes. From the destruction of Black Wall Street in Oklahoma to the predatory lending schemes that cost millions of people, disproportionately Black, their homes and wealth in the 2008 financial crisis. Today, the average white family has 7 times the wealth of the average Black family. The legacy of the Freedmen's Bank is still alive.
Yep, I agree. All right, so
200.
So basically, that that really kind of tells you the history of the Freedmen's Bank collapse in 1874. After the emancipation, Black people were encouraged to put their money into these banks, which I mean, again, I think that it stayed for those white men's bank. And then it says poor management, corruption, and lack of oversight led to $3 million in losses. But I think I don't ever think that they wanted the Black people or the Black community there to actually reconstruct, as you would say, because they pulled out. That was never their intention. So let's but the lesson here is the internal infrastructure. Even with access to money, without a system for management, oversight, collective control, and a way to manage when somebody does something like that to our community, this will continue to happen if we don't find a system that can correct things that happen like that outside of the government. So we have to find a creative way that responds to things like that, corruption like that. And the best way is for us to be in control of that as a community, like a community bank or a state bank. So something like that would work more now, and that's something that we all would have to. So Killer Mike has something like that with Greenwood, which I'm actually a member of. So I do like that there is something in place there. So, and it also keeps track of group economics there. So I really do like that. The psychological impact is that generations of Black people became wary of banks, and so we've been known as unbanked. And then that slowed the wealth accumulation and our economic growth within our community. So that paired with the other things, the internal conflicts, the internal betrayals, including that when we do have some infrastructure that is trying to be built, because we would have had to build on not just the bank, but some other things that supports the community. All of these things are being corrupted as soon as we try. And then we're being demonized for wanting to be more of a communal people. Even today, even now, you have people within our own community who are not communal people, but they want to benefit off of the people of the Black community being communal. It's just wild. So if reparations or community investments are distributed without a system to protect it, circulate it, and multiply those resources, the same collapse can and will happen. Not necessarily because of outside sabotage, but because of structural and unpreparedness and internal fragmentation. So this is what I'm saying. We have to be wary of this when we are looking to rebuild this network. Okay. All right. And so the next, and then the next thing is the civil rights era economic split. So during the 1960s, the push for civil rights, integration, voting rights, legal equality, police brutality to stop, those things, we are civilians and we also have rights. Often overshadowed or sidelined demands for economic reparations and land redistribution. So there was a lot of different people, leadership during this time in the 60s that were divided on what to prioritize, and economic justice largely fell off the table. And so without unified agreement on the economic side, the movement achieved political wins but left the wealth gap untouched, a gap we're still fighting today. So all we need to do is decide on how we're going to fight the issue as a whole, because we have to attack all of it. It can't just be the cultural part of it. It can't just be the economic side of it either. It has to all be touched, and all of us have to. It's like all hands on deck. So back in the 60s, there was some political wins, right? The Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act were victories. Also, the Immigration Act. But the black-white wealth gap remained largely intact, and without economic structures for reparations, Black people could not translate the political rights, the political win that they got. It didn't look like a win because it wasn't tangible. They couldn't use that in their household, right? Because the wealth was being extracted before it was being communitized, meaning Black Wall Street is a communitized wealth system. That was we didn't have proper protections there, but that was because we were still in the process of building it. But we thought that, Dr. Crane sold the dream that integration was going to help us with all of these civilian issues that we were having, these internal conflicts that we're having within our country. And then he found out that that was incorrect. That was absolutely the wrong thing to do. We should have just stayed with the system we already had, because now not only are we not benefiting from it, but our wealth is being extracted exponentially. And again, there's that wealth disparity. We lost opportunities for a systemic wealth building. So instead of putting focus, and I understand the frustrations that Malcolm X had with Dr. King, instead of focusing on building our own community, we're focused on integrating with other people who don't give a fuck if we live or die. Like, what part of the game is that? Why do we want to do this? Well, because people paid Dr. King because they've seen our community dynamic. They'd seen it, but they've seen how they can exploit it. And that was the whole play. Let's exploit this community dynamic because they got wealth, they got money. But in order to do it, we have to get we have to make sure that their self-esteem is down, so they want to buy everything from us anyway. I mean, this has been a long-range plan that they've been working on. Modern parallels for today is that the conversation risks repeating the same mistake, focusing on legal or symbolic gains without cohesive economic infrastructure. So without any type of alignment or a policy intended to repair the systemic inequities, could dissipate, leaving structural problem unchanged. But the bottom line is, it's not just about policy. That policy has to be, they have to enforce the policy. So who's going to make them enforce that policy? That has to be also in the plan. What are we going to do if that's not enforced? You know how Donald Trump is not doing what the Republicans want him to do? And so they're like, oh, well, we're just going to vote him out next semester. Well, really, or not next semester, next term, next political term. They're going to vote him out in 2028. But he's like, oh, well, I'm going to just stay dictator forever. What consequences are they given to him that he's going to actually respond to? that would give him that he can't overcome. There has to be a response that can't be overcome. So in my opinion, that needs to be a part of our system, a response that they cannot overcome. And they, meaning the internal problems, our internal issues that the system needs to be able to correct internal issues that can't be overcome, external issues that can't be overcome, and systemic issues that can't be, like, we have to find a way to make sure that we have a bulletproof, well-oiled machine system. So the reparations can't fix disunity. And now, even today, when you have the freedmen versus the Pan-African debate, this is still a long-standing fundamental disagreement, because within today's reparations movement, the tensions between the freedmen and the ADOS advocates who argue reparations must be lineage-based for descendants of U.S. slavery, and Pan-Africanists who want to include all Black people in America. Why it matters. This internal split, it dilutes the internal power instead of presenting a united demand. The community gets caught in infighting, giving the government and outside groups an easy excuse to stall or divide the payout. But also, again, this is with that internal thing, because you got a lot of people who present as Black American and they're not actually Black American. So why this creates tension? Fragmented political pressure. So lawmakers and institutions see competing claims, making it easier to delay or weaken our reparations proposal. Instead of presenting a unified front, the movement is perceived as divided. Okay? This is another reason why our community is not building proper reparations, because we're focused on the government giving us some type of payout to repair our community. And this is really only for people who want to repair the community. If you are looking for a check, then maybe you should still fight for this type of reparation. But if you really are about repairing the Black community, like what we are talking about, if you really about it, then this is the conversation that we need to be having. So make sure that you filter it now, because if this is not for you, if you're not about community building, you gotta go where they are not about community building, and they're just talking about things that don't matter. So the public message, or with the facing message that the people who are viewing this from the outside looking in, the media often frames the debate as who deserves reparations, rather than focusing on the structural injustice. Right? This confuses supporters and allows opponents to frame reparations as exclusionary or unfair. Who deserves it? That's, first of all, who the fuck are you to tell me who deserves it? Because you didn't go through it, so that means that you would put a price on my pain. No. And that's why the reparations, or the internal repairing has to be from the inside out. It has to, because these people think that they can dictate what that looks like. You see? If reparations funds or policies try to satisfy both camps, the impact per household is reduced. Potentially undermining the original purpose, restoration, and intergenerational wealth repair. Here's the thing. Africans, let me just see here. Let me show y'all something, why the internal is the best option for us. and we have to do it around a socialist structure. We can have capitalism, but I don't think that it should be rooted in capitalism. I think it should be rooted in a socialist or a community style structure, a community style network. Okay, that's all I'm saying. A community style network. We are a community style culture. This is what I wanted to show. So let me share my screen here. And the reason why this is important is because this is how these people think. Like, this is how these people think when they come over here and when they interact with us and when they are in political spheres and they are influencing people about this reparations conversation. This is what they think.
Treat you in general in Dubai?
Depends which Arabs.
Yeah. Okay.
Arabs, Emiratis, the owners of the country, UAE. I have never seen a bad one. For me, I take treatment from Arabs according to where they come from. Emiratis directly, they don't have time for that. According to me, I haven't seen it because they're not there to be your boss. You'll never find an Emirati being your boss. You're working for them.
Yeah.
You understand?
Child, I can't do it. Okay, so let's see. Well, I can't find it, but there was a clip of a person. Why? There's a video of this African woman talking about when she comes to somebody else's country, the only thing she's there to do is to take. That's it. She's not there to build with anybody. So that's why my point is that the best way for us to repair our community is to build from within, because Africans don't want to build with us. They only want to take. So reparations is not going to work. Not from the viewpoint that you guys are talking about it from. And so that's, you know, and I don't think that well, here's the thing. I do think that people in this country are owed for different things. And if they are owed, it would be a completely different reason. Then that would be something that they would need to fight. We would need to know what that reason is and what they're fighting for, because we do have two different plights going on. So if they feel that they're owed for something, then they should, you know, start their own fight, which I do believe they have the African Union that they're working on, because their country was pillaged and plundered too. Their people were, you know, not every tribe in Africa was part of the slave trade, obviously. So there are some people that have this, well, the whole world was involved, but I don't know if any tribes directly benefited from it. Maybe indirectly, but not directly. But the point is that we have to build from within, because there's no other way that it can be done. All right. So then the other thing is, the other reason why our infrastructure is not being built, and why we have to identify why it's not, and so that we can make sure that we can build parameters around our weaknesses, is other outside groups and our resource extraction, which is what we were just talking about right now in regards to immigrants. They can come in, they can eat off of whatever that were things that were meant for us, or things that we're building. But Africans do not come to this country to build with African American people. So the best way to repair our community would be to repair from within, because they won't be there. And neither will other people who don't want to see us thrive in this country. So we'll have to, you know, move forward without these groups. We cannot continue. And I know that there's this delineation movement going on, and I do like the organization of it, because people say it's divisive. No, I think it's about organizing our group into something that we can mold and be better at managing. That's what I think. So let's see here. And so true reparations are not about payouts. They're about building a network that will support us as a community. That's what reparations is about. Reparations should be a system that a network, a system that we can build off of and that will benefit our community as a whole. So if you pour water into a cracked jar, it doesn't matter how much you pour, the jar can't hold it. Whenever past leaders created plans that included the majority, co-ops, land trusts, schools, we built wealth that lasted until sabotage hit it. So imagine what happens when we repair the jar first. Before we fight for a check, we must design the infrastructure as a community-led production. And that's basically the long and the short of it. Like, do you want to do you really want to repair the community or not? And if not, then this would not be what the best channel for you. But if so, this is what we're going to do moving forward. So we must build a network. So the biggest mistake that, let's see here. The biggest mistake we make about reparations is thinking it's a finish line. So in reality, reparations are a starting point. They're useless without unity, strategy, and systems that protect and multiply them. A check is just money, but reparations done right after restoration, they're the foundation for sovereignty. We do have a Discord that we're going to be taking this discussion out further. So you want to go ahead and join that. If you look in the description, the link to the Discord is in there. It's called the Black Community Discord group. So if you want to, you can go ahead and do that. Please share the video because this really is about us repairing what we need to repair in our community. And I think that if we leave that up to other people, we'll always end up with the short end of the stick. The only way that we're going to thrive or get out of this existential crisis that we're in, both politically, socially, culturally, economically, and also environmentally. There's so many environmental crises that are happening to Black people all over the country. But I just wanted to show you, because there's something that's super important that I wanted to kind of just drive home really quick here before we get off this line. Let me just share my screen. The Black community, it's like, when will the Black community be successful? What we're aiming for is a sustainable community. Right now, we are at an existential crisis. An existential crisis meaning that we might be, regressing as a community. If you're not progressing, you are regressing. How do we sustain ourselves and move forward in the Black community? What do we measure that against? Let me show you. The most widely recognized pillars of sustainability are the 3 pillars of sustainability: the environmental, social, and economic. This framework posits that true sustainability can only be achieved when these 3 interconnected areas are balanced and function in harmony, considering ecological preservation, social equity, and economic viability. Some models also include a 4th pillar, cultural, to encompass the nuances of human traditions and values, while others extend it to human or technological. So we are measuring it on that. How are we doing in terms of, as a community, are we handling or managing our environmental footprint, both the output and the intake? Are we handling that the way that we should? Like, is there water problems everywhere? Are there pollution problems everywhere? Are there PFAS problems everywhere? air quality problems everywhere. Is that affecting our health? Is that affecting our lifespan? Or how are we handling that? No, we're not handling that well. So I would say we probably have maybe a C there, or maybe even a D on the environmental, because there's so many water crises going on. The only thing we can do, it seems like, is pass out water, which is good for temporarily, but that is not sustainable. We're talking about sustainable solutions. Then we look at the social climate. We don't have control over our own narrative. People can say whatever they want to about it, and all we have is cancel culture. I think in some instances that is fair. Some instances that makes sense, but that is not sustainable either. I do think that we should have other ways. I do think there's some positive and effective ways, like boycotting, and continue to communicate on social media about these things, and then organizing offline. That's our social structure. I think we probably get maybe maybe like a low B in that social, because we're not building with it. If we built with our social capital, we would have an A. And in our economics, we have gross income of like a few $1 trillion, like $2 trillion, but that's gross. That does not net. That's not income that we can reinvest into. Only 2% of the income that we gross is invested back into our own community. That's absurd. That is absurd. So we have to build infrastructure to where we know how much is going to be reinvested back into our community and where it's going to be reinvested, so that it maximizes our potential. I would say these four are so: environmental, social, and economic, and cultural, which I believe we have a good grip on our cultural. We just need to better gatekeep, and also alliances. Like, we need to be able to manage those properly. Again, the system would need to be help us with that information. All right, well, I just wanted to go over that really quick. Hopefully you guys understand what I was trying to say, but I will be touching more on this topic. Again, the Discord link is in the description. If you click on the link, you can go into the Black Community public group through the description box. All right, again, this is Eileen Nicole. Please like the video. See you later. Bye.